At the gala, the wicked scion Julian was pawing at the Ice Queen CEO, Vivian. I kicked the doors wide open, pulled the cold and elegant Vivian into my arms, and kissed her red lips in front of everyone. I slammed $100 million check into Julian's face. From today on, her and the entirety of New York, it's all on my tab. Welcome to Windfall, Lord. An exciting story is about to begin. Listen, if you've never experienced that kind of despair, the kind where you have to choose between buying a rock-hard hot dog or paying this month's electric bill, then you don't know a damn thing about real life. Winter in Queens, New York, is as cold as the heart of the ex-girlfriend who just dumped me via text. My name is Ryder Donovan, a bottom-tier mechanic smelling of engine oil and teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Right now, I'm huddled in my drafty, dilapidated garage, staring intently at the Chase Bank app on my phone screen. It displayed a number capable of giving someone an immediate brain hemorrhage. Available balance: $1.00. Yes, you heard that right. My entire net worth was only enough to buy a single can of discounted bottom-tier cola from the vending machine on the corner. And just outside the garage's rolling shutter, a mob loan shark nicknamed Bulldozer Mike was there with two of his muscle-bound goons, hammering my iron door with baseball bats in a deafening rhythm. Ryder, you son of a bitch. You yellow-bellied coward. If you don't come up with that $5,000 tonight, I guarantee that by tomorrow morning, there'll be a toothless corpse floating in the Queen's sewers. Mike's gravelly voice tore through the iron door, making my scalp tingle with dread. $5,000. To those bastards on Wall Street in their custom-tailored suits. That might just be the bar tab for a single dinner, but for me right now, it was an astronomical sum, more than enough to buy my miserable life. The time on the phone screen ticked away relentlessly. 11:59 p.m. I closed my eyes in despair, bracing for the beating that would follow once the door was kicked open. Perhaps Mike would break my left leg first, and then smash my few pathetic car repair tools. At that exact moment, the time jumped to midnight. Ding! Deep within my mind, an incredibly crisp mechanical notification suddenly rang out without warning. The sound didn't belong to this world. It was cold, yet possessed an irresistible magic. Immediately following that, a synthesized mechanical voice that only I could understand echoed through my skull. Midnight Zero rules system activated. Host Ryder Donovan. Identity confirmed. From this moment forward, every time the midnight bell tolls, the host is granted one privilege. You may forcibly add a zero to the end of any number within your line of sight that belongs under your name. I snapped my eyes open, my heart pounding like an out-of-control V8 engine. What on earth is this? An auditory hallucination? Or have I finally starved myself into schizophrenia? Add a zero? I swallowed hard, muttering under my breath. The pounding on the door grew louder, and the rolling shutter was already severely deformed. I didn't have time to check into a psychiatric emergency room. It was a Hail Mary. I stared intently at that pathetic one on my phone screen and issued the command in my mind. System, add a zero to the end of my account balance. An incredible sight appeared. There was no buffering wheel of network lag, nor any pop-up warnings from the bank. The pixels on the phone screen seemed to come alive. That solitary one, after a faint flicker of blue light, jumped directly into a rounded, plump 10. I immediately tapped on the transaction details. A transfer record for $9, labeled as legal overseas income, had appeared out of thin air. The timestamp precisely locked at 12:01 a.m. Good God, it was actually real. My breathing grew heavy in an instant. $1 had turned into 10. It didn't sound like a big deal. It wasn't even enough to cover the spare change of the $5,000 Mike wanted. But what if, by midnight tomorrow, I add another zero to that $10? That makes it 100. The day after, 100 becomes 1,000. On the fourth day, 1,000 becomes 10,000. The fifth day, 100,000. The sixth day, 1,000,000. The seventh day, 10 million. The eighth day, 100 million. By the ninth day, that's $1 billion. 9 days. In just 9 short days, I could go from a bottom-tier loser who can't even afford a hot dog to a super-rich mogul worth $1 billion. Thud! With a loud crash, the already rickety rolling shutter door was finally kicked open by Mike. The biting cold wind, mixed with snowflakes, poured into the garage. Mike, like an enraged grizzly bear, strode up to me clutching a baseball bat. He grabbed the collar of my tattered, oil-stained jacket and hauled me up by force. Time's up, Ryder. Where's the money? Mike snarled, staring me down with a mouthful of yellow teeth. If this had been just a minute ago, I would have been terrified, my legs turning to jelly as I knelt on the ground begging him for a few more days. But now, although I only have $10 in my pocket, my mind holds a billion-dollar empire that will crush most of Wall Street in just 9 days. Confidence instantly exploded within my chest. I slapped away Mike's rough, oversized hand, straightened the collar of my tattered jacket, and looked at him with a tone that was incredibly arrogant and calm, one that surprised even me. Listen, Mike, $5,000 is jack shit. Give me 3 days. At this time 3 days from now, not only will I pay you back $10,000 with interest, But I'll also use cold hard cash to smash that rusty baseball bat of yours to pieces. Mike froze, and the two thugs behind him exchanged bewildered glances. In the underworld of Queens, no one had ever dared to speak to the bulldozer in such a tone. My eyes held none of their usual fear. Only an arrogance that seemed to trample everyone underfoot. Have you lost your mind, Ryder? 3 days? $10,000? Mike narrowed his eyes, eyeing me with deep suspicion. If you're trying to play me, if I'm playing you, you can take my life and feed it to the dogs in 3 days. I interrupted with a cold sneer. No, take your men and get the hell out of my place. I need some peace and quiet. Mike stared at me for a full 10 seconds, seemingly intimidated by the inexplicable sense of pressure radiating from me. He let out a cold snort and pointed his baseball bat at my nose. Remember your words, kid. In 3 days, I want to see $10,000 in cash. Watching Mike lead his men away, I let out a long sigh of relief. My back already drenched in cold sweat. The crisis was temporarily averted. However, looking at the measly $10 on my phone, my brow furrowed slightly. The system can only be used once a day, and relying on it for natural appreciation is far too slow. I must get my hands on more money tomorrow. Otherwise, there's no way I'll be able to produce $10,000 for Mike in 3 days. Since a zero is added at midnight, what if I use this $10 to earn $500? Or even $5,000? Before tomorrow night? Then, come midnight, it would turn into $5,000. Or even $50,000. A frantic smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Tomorrow night, at that smoke-filled underground fight club in Queens, I'm going to show you bastards what a real dimensional strike looks like. To be honest, if someone possessed the superpower that allowed them to rake in cash while lying down, most people's first instinct would be to buy a few cases of beer and rot on a beat-up sofa. But I, Ryder Donovan, am not the kind of idiot who just sits around waiting for a handout from the heavens. When it comes to the snowball of capital, you have to give it a powerful enough initial velocity before it can trigger a real avalanche. During the day on the first day, I took those measly $10 to a junkyard and scavenged a scrap generator, relying on these hands that have spent a decade fixing cars. I spent 3 hours refurbishing it and sold it for $200 to a desperate taxi driver who needed to get back on the road. As soon as the clock struck midnight that night, the system's cold, mechanical voice rang out in my mind right on schedule. Without a moment's hesitation, I added the zero. 200 instantly became 2,000. The next day, I used those $2,000 to pick up a beat-up Honda blowing black smoke from a used car market. After tuning the engine all night and giving it a thorough scrub, I flipped it for $6,000 to a college student desperate to impress a girl. By midnight that evening, that $6,000 had split and multiplied directly into $60,000. It was that simple. In just 3 short days, I had aggressively rolled that initial $1 base in my account into $60,000. But in a concrete jungle like New York that eats people alive, this amount of money wasn't even enough for a down payment on a decent luxury apartment. I needed a real surge. On the night of the 3rd day, I headed to the largest underground casino in Queens, the Boiler Room. This was a Russian mob joint, where the air was a permanent cocktail of cheap cigars, expensive perfume, and the desperate stench of sweat from people who had just lost their shirts. Wearing my faded, washed-out jacket, I swaggered in and slammed $60,000 worth of chips onto a high-stakes Texas Hold'em table. The men seated at the table were either fringe Wall Street speculators or high-profile underground bookies from Queens. When they saw me, dressed like I just crawled out of a dumpster, their eyes filled with blatant, undisguised contempt. Hey, grease monkey, you lost? The blinds here are $2,000. Not that dime-a-dozen coin game you're used to, sneered a Wall Street punk sitting across from me, his hair slicked back and wearing a tailored Armani suit. I didn't even acknowledge him. I just snapped my fingers at the dealer and said, "Deal. As God is my witness, I, Ryder, may have been poor in the past, but I've never backed down from anyone playing cards in underground garages. What's more, my confidence tonight stemmed from a systemic cheat that was beyond their wildest imaginations. For the next 2 hours, I was like a crazed, hungry wolf, charging headlong across the gambling table. I didn't care about the odds of winning or losing. I played purely on psychological warfare. I knew that even if I lost all $60,000 tonight, I could still rebuild my crew tomorrow. But they couldn't. Every cent in their hands was stained with blood. All in. As the fateful river card fell, I smiled and pushed the mountain of chips in front of me into the center of the table. The man in the Armani suit was already drenched in cold sweat. He stared at me intently, trying to find a single crack in my nonchalant expression. He was holding 2 pair, a very tempting hand. You bluffing piece of trash. I call. He spat through gritted teeth, pushing all his chips forward. It was a full $200,000. I shrugged and slowly turned over my whole cards. 3 aces. Sorry, suit guy. Looks like you're walking back to Manhattan tonight. I laughed loudly, sweeping all the chips on the table toward me under the gazes of a crowd looking at me like I was a monster. This time, I walked away with nearly $300,000. At 11:50 p.m., I walked out of the boiler room carrying a black duffel bag stuffed with cash. The cold wind outside didn't sober me up. Instead, it made my blood boil even more. On the Chase Bank app, my balance was already showing $360,000. I lit a cigarette at the street corner, quietly waiting for that glorious moment to arrive. 11:59, 12 o'clock sharp. Ding, the Midnight Zero rule system has been activated. Please select the target digit. Host. Without a moment's hesitation, I locked onto the balance displayed on my phone screen. Add that damn zero for me. The numbers on the screen jumped violently, erupting in a faint blue light that only I could see. That glaring 360,000 instantly transformed into a long string of digits enough to make one's heart stop. 6 million. I leaned against the cold red brick wall, the fingers holding my cigarette trembling uncontrollably. $6 million. 3 days ago, I had nearly had my legs broken over $5,000. And now, I was a millionaire worth millions. Ryder, time's up. Just then, several figures emerged from the shadows at the corner of the street. It was Bulldozer Mike. He had indeed brought his men to corner me right on schedule. Catching sight of the bulging duffel bag in my hand, a glint of greed flashed in Mike's eyes. Looks like you hit a stroke of luck at the casino. $10,000, not a penny less. I looked at Mike and suddenly felt he was as ridiculous as an ant waving a toothpick in front of a giant dragon. I unzipped the duffel bag and casually pulled out 2 bundles of crisp $100 bills, exactly $10,000. Without even a glance, I tossed them right in front of Mike's mud-caked leather shoes like I was throwing away trash. Here's the $5,000 I owe you. And another $5,000 as interest, consider it a tip. I blew out a smoke ring, looking down at him with eyes that treated him like a mere insect. Now, pick up your money and get out of my sight. Don't let me smell that nauseating stench of poverty on you ever again. Mike and his hired thugs were completely stunned by my overbearing aura. He bent down to pick up the money, his face a mixture of shock and fear. Without daring to utter another word, he slunk away and vanished into the night. I tossed away my cigarette butt and looked up at the dazzling New York night sky. 3 million is just the beginning. Tomorrow, I'm going to show everyone who ever looked down on me the true meaning of ruthlessness. When the numbers in your bank account break 7 figures, even the air you breathe feels different. That scent, filled with confidence, freedom, and sheer arrogance, is something no cheap perfume could ever replicate. At 10 in the morning, I woke up in the presidential suite of a 5-star hotel in Manhattan, looking at the $6 million sitting quietly in my mobile account. I took a long, deep stretch. For the sake of daily expenses, I casually transferred $300,000 into a newly issued top-tier black gold debit card to serve as today's pocket money. After all, for someone like me now, a 6-figure expense doesn't even warrant a blink of an eye. After taking a shower and changing into an Armani casual suit just delivered by the hotel butler, I took a taxi straight to Manhattan's premier supercar customization center. It was time to say a final goodbye to the grease-stained Ryder of the past. As I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Aston Martin showroom, a blast of air conditioning hit me, carrying the luxurious scent of high-grade leather and polished metal. I walked straight toward the DBS Superleggera flagship parked in the center of the showroom, looking like a black phantom, with its streamlined body and aggressive front fascia. It felt as if it were tailor-made for the man I had become. Just as I was about to reach out and touch the flawless carbon fiber rear wing, a shrill, caustic voice that turned my stomach rang out from behind me. Ryder, are you lost? The Queens subway station is 2 blocks down and to the left. I turned around. Standing before me was none other than Chloe, the ex-girlfriend who had dumped me via text 3 days ago. Today, she was wearing a tight dress that she clearly thought looked high-end, but actually reeked of a cheap socialite vibe. She was clinging to the arm of a man in a tailored suit, his hair slicked back so tight it looked like it had been licked by a cow. That was her new flame, Derek, a junior manager at some third-rate investment bank on Wall Street. In other words, the ATM whose bed Chloe hadn't hesitated to climb into for the sake of money. Chloe, who is this? Derek glanced me up and down, his eyes lingering on my face which still bore the traces of a working-class life. A blatant sneer curled his lips. Oh, is this that ex-boyfriend you mentioned? The one who turns screws in some dilapidated garage? The cars here are highly reflective. Don't let his stench of poverty ruin the leather seats. Chloe covered her mouth and laughed exaggeratedly. Oh honey, you're so wicked. Ryder, take my advice. Even if we chopped you up and sold you by the pound, you couldn't afford a single tire on any car here. Just leave now before you embarrass yourself further. Derek is here to help me pick up a V8 Vantage today. Watching this pair of scumbags flaunt their pathetic sense of superiority in front of me, I almost burst out laughing. I didn't get angry. I didn't even have the urge to argue. When you're a lion, do you really care about the buzzing of 2 flies? Ignoring them completely, I simply snapped my fingers to call over the sales manager, who had been watching from the sidelines, hesitating over whether or not to attend to me. Sir, how can I help you? The manager asked with a professional smile, though a hint of skepticism lingered in his eyes. I pointed to the black DBS flagship model beside me. This car. The one in stock, how much? The manager froze for a moment before replying. You have an excellent eye, sir. This is the crown jewel of our showroom, featuring a full carbon fiber kit and top-tier specifications. The total out-the-door price for a cash purchase is $350,000. However, $350,000? Derek burst into exaggerated laughter, as if he had just heard the world's funniest joke. Ryder, have you lost your mind? You can't even afford $350 for rent. Manager, call security and get this lunatic out of here right now. Don't let him hold up my loan application. Chloe also looked at me with disdain. Ryder, even if you want to act rich in front of me, could you at least find a more believable way? This only makes you seem more pathetic. I didn't even acknowledge them. I pulled the black gold debit card directly from my pocket, held it between two fingers, and tossed it lightly onto the hood. The pin is 6/8. Go swipe it now. Full payment. I want to see the keys and temporary plates for this car in my hand within 10 minutes. I stared into the manager's eyes, my tone carrying a sense of absolute command that brooked no argument. The manager's expression changed instantly as he looked at the black gold card, which symbolized an extremely high asset threshold. His hands trembled as he picked up the card, sprinting toward the finance office as if he were carrying a royal decree. The smile froze on Derek's face, and Chloe looked as if she had seen a ghost. Impossible. Where did you get a black card? It must be a fake. Or you stole it from somewhere, Derek roared, losing his composure. Just moments ago, he had been haggling with the salesperson to buy that entry-level V8, trying to stretch the loan installments out to 60 months. In less than 3 minutes, the sales manager came jogging back under the awe-filled gazes of the staff. His back was bowed so low he nearly touched the floor as he respectfully presented the bank card, the purchase contract, and a set of car keys radiating a mesmerizing luster. Mr. Donovan, the payment has been cleared in full, $350,000. Paid up front. This Aston Martin now belongs entirely to you. Would you like us to hold a delivery ceremony for you? A deathly silence filled the showroom. Chloe's eyes were wide with shock as she stared at me in disbelief, her entire body trembling. Ryder, you really bought this car? $350,000? In full? Derek's face had turned the color of raw liver. His pride in being a Wall Street elite was crushed into dust in the face of the $350,000 in cold cash I had just dropped. I took the keys and casually tossed my Armani suit jacket into the passenger seat. Then, I walked up to Chloe, looked at her face, now contorted with extreme shock and regret, and gave a faint smile. Chloe, I really have to thank you. If you hadn't cheated on me with this loser who needs a 60-month mortgage just to buy a beat-up car, I might never have known how incredible it feels to drop hundreds of thousands of dollars on a big toy. With that, I stopped looking at the clownish pair. I pulled open the door, a masterpiece of mechanical beauty, and slid into the driver's seat. Boom! The V12 twin-turbo engine let out a deafening roar, like a beast waking from its slumber. I floored the accelerator, and amidst the piercing screech of burning rubber, the black phantom lunged out of the showroom. I left Chloe and Derek with nothing but a trail of exhaust fumes and a lifetime of endless regret that they could never undo. When you truly step into the ranks of the millionaires, you realize that the rules of the world change completely. The thresholds you once thought were insurmountable now collapse with the gentle push of your wealth. On Friday night, I drove my brand new Aston Martin to the Apex Club, the most exclusive private establishment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. The membership roster here is practically a Forbes list of Wall Street. If an ordinary person so much as breathed the air at the entrance, the security guards would probably think they were polluting the environment. I wasn't here to play the socialite. I was here because my old partner, Brody, told me this is where New York's old money families and top-tier capitalists exchange intelligence every night. Since I had decided to stir up a storm in the city, this was the perfect point of entry. I pulled into the exclusive valet parking area and was just about to toss my keys to the attendant. Suddenly, accompanied by the arrogant roar of a V12 engine, a neon green Lamborghini Aventador charged in sideways like a mad bull. With a piercing screech of brakes, it forcibly snatched the VIP spot I was about to pull into, its rear end nearly scraping my Aston Martin. The doors swung upward like scissors, and a young man stepped out. He was dressed in an expensive, custom Seville rose suit. His hair was combed to perfection, and his face was a mask of pure arrogance. This is Julian Thorne, heir to the Thorne Consortium, one of New York's old money dynasties, and the most notorious brat on Wall Street. He tossed his car keys to the trembling valet without so much as a glance in my direction, his voice dripping with arrogance. Drive it carefully. This is a limited edition. If you scratch even a speck of paint, you couldn't pay for it if you sold yourself into slavery. And tell that eyesore of a black car next to it to get lost. It's in my way. I leaned against my car door and let out a cold laugh. Hey, hairgel boy. Ever heard of a line? That's my parking spot. Julian stopped in his tracks and turned, looking me up and down with a gaze full of condescending disdain. What exactly are you? You think you're worthy of fighting me for a spot? Do you have any idea who I am? My name is Thorn. I could snap my fingers and have your bank accounts frozen by tomorrow morning. Now, take your nouveau riche piece of junk and vanish from my sight immediately. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind calling someone to turn it into a pile of scrap metal. Looking at his punchable face, I didn't get angry. Instead, I felt the blood throughout my body boil with excitement. In the past, when encountering a wealthy second-generation heir with such a deep background, someone from the bottom of society would have no choice but to swallow their pride. But things were different now. In my trunk, $1 million in cash, which I had just withdrawn from Chase Bank this afternoon, was lying there quietly. I had originally just wanted to feel the physical weight of the money, but I never expected it to come in handy so soon. Smash my car into scrap metal? A cruel smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Young Master Julian, you lack imagination. You don't need to call people to smash a car. You just need to spend money. I turned and walked to the rear of the car, pressing the trunk release. Under the puzzled gazes of Julian and several doormen, I hauled out that heavy black duffel bag with one hand. The moment the zipper slid open, bundles of neatly stacked $100 bills, exuding the intoxicating scent of fresh ink, were exposed to the air like a green bombshell. I tossed the duffel bag directly onto the hood of the Aston Martin and turned to look at the nearby doormen and security guards, men exploited by capitalists and earning minimum wage. Listen up, everyone. I pointed at the neon green Lamborghini, my voice booming loud enough for everyone present to hear. I'm putting up a $500,000 bounty. Anyone who dares to give that green blowfly a solid hit can come over and take $10,000 for themselves. And if anyone can smash through its windshield, you walk away with $100,000 in cold, hard cash. The scene fell into a deathly silence as everyone's breathing grew heavy. $500,000. That kind of money was enough to change the trajectory of their entire lives. Julian froze for a moment, then burst into a fit of manic laughter as if he were looking at an idiot. Are you fucking insane? You think a little bit of stinking cash can buy them? I'm a thorn. If any of you dare touch my car, I guarantee you'll be begging on the streets of New York by tomorrow. However, Julian underestimated the terrifying magic of pure cash flow. In the face of absolute money, the prestige of an old money family wasn't worth a damn. A burly African-American security guard was the first to see red. He glanced at Julian, then fixed a death stare on the mountain of cash piled on the hood. Suddenly, he yanked a heavy red iron wrench from the nearby fire hydrant station. Fuck the Thorn family. With a roar, the African-American security guard swung his arm in a wide arc, the heavy iron wrench whistling through the air before slamming violently into the Lamborghini's prized carbon fiber hood. Thud! With a deafening crash, the expensive paintwork instantly shattered, and a massive crater was punched into the hood. That loud bang acted like a starting gun. The rest of the bellhops and security guards descended into total madness. They grabbed baseball bats, telescopic batons, and one even hoisted a metal trash can, charging at the Lamborghini like a pack of ravenous wolves. Bang! Crack! Boom! The sound of shattering glass and twisting metal intertwined. In less than a minute, that limited edition supercar worth hundreds of thousands of dollars was transformed into a heap of unrecognizable scrap metal. My car! You lunatics! I'm going to kill you! Julian watched his beloved car being smashed into a pulp, trembling with rage, his face as pale as a corpse. Yet he didn't even have the courage to step forward and stop them. I laughed loudly and waved my hand, calling over the panting security guards to distribute the money. Then, I pulled several bundles of cash from the duffel bag, walked up to the nearly broken Julian, and slammed the money hard against his refined face. The bills scattered all over the ground, looking as if they were being offered at his grave. Here is $300,000. Consider it payment for your car repairs. I leaned in close to his face, speaking in an arrogant tone that only the two of us could hear. Remember my name, Ryder Donovan. From this day forward, the Thorn family's days of running rampant in New York are over. I turned and walked toward the club's entrance without giving him another glance. What I didn't know was that behind the floor-to-ceiling windows of the second-floor VIP box, a pair of cold, piercingly beautiful eyes had witnessed everything that just transpired. As I stepped over the shattered glass of the Lamborghini and pushed open the golden-laid oak doors of the Apex Club, the midnight bells chimed punctually in my mind. Ding! The Midnight Zero rule system has been activated. A smirk played on my lips as I issued the command in my mind. The remaining $3 million in my Chase bank account instantly surged like nuclear fission, skyrocketing to a full $30 million. With a level of confidence powerful enough to shatter any sense of reason, I walked straight into the Apollo private conference room on the second floor of the club. My best friend, Brody, had messaged me saying that a private high-stakes bet was taking place here tonight, one that would determine the landscape of the New York tech scene. As I pushed the door open, the atmosphere inside the conference room was cold enough to form ice shards. Sitting at one end of the long table was the renowned top venture capital queen of Wall Street, Vivian Cross. She wore an impeccably tailored navy blue custom suit, her lips a fiery red, with sharp, ice blue eyes that seemed capable of seeing right through anyone. She was the kind of elite woman who made the men of Wall Street want to conquer her, yet terrified that she would devour them whole. Sitting across from her was Julian's uncle, Marcus, the executive director of the Thorn conglomerate. Vivian, stop holding out. Marcus toyed with the cigar in his hand, his tone laced with arrogant menace. Cross Ventures capital is currently tied up in the European market. You can't even scrape together $5 million in cash flow right now. Hand over the 51% controlling stake in that AI startup to me. It's your only way out. Vivian sat with her hands crossed on the table, though her gaze remained icy. I could see she was struggling to hide the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. The Thorn family truly had her by the throat with their massive cash reserves. In this circle, being without cash is like being on a battlefield without bullets. $5 million to swallow a future unicorn? I sauntered into the conference room, casually pouring myself a glass of whiskey from the nearby cabinet. Marcus, your Thorn family isn't just arrogant, you're disgustingly stingy. My sudden intrusion left everyone in the conference room stunned. Several bodyguards immediately reached into their suit jackets, but Vivian raised her hand to stop them. Her gaze fell on my face, a hint of amusement flickering in her eyes. Clearly, she had seen my feat of smashing the car downstairs from behind the window. Where did this idiot come from? Where's security? Marcus roared, completely disregarding a fresh face like mine dressed in Armani casual wear. I ignored him, walking straight to Vivian's side, pulling out a chair to sit down, and looking directly into her beautiful eyes. $10 million. I took a sip of the whiskey and set the glass down heavily on the table with a sharp clink. I'm offering $10 million in pure cash for 40% of this startup. Not only will it get you out of this bind, but it'll also send this old man back to the sewer where he belongs. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire room erupted in an uproar. 10 million? In pure cash? Marcus laughed as if he had heard the joke of the century, pointing at my nose and mocking. Kid, do you have any idea what 10 million in cash means in the financial system? You think you're playing Monopoly? If you can produce that amount of money right now, not only will I get the hell out of here, I'll eat this entire cigar. I let out a cold sneer and pulled out that black gold card, the symbol of infinite power, slamming it onto the table with a sharp crack. Then, I dialed the direct line for Chase Bank's VIP private customer service and switched it to speakerphone. Good evening, Mr. Donovan. How may I assist you today? The voice of the account manager came through the phone, sounding exceptionally respectful. Authorize an immediate transfer of $10 million to the target account of Cross Venture Group. Execute it now. No questions asked? I stared at Marcus's stiffening face, my tone icy. Understood, Mr. Donovan. Your account currently holds tens of millions of dollars in liquid assets. The $10 million transfer has been approved and is expected to reach the recipient's account within 30 seconds. 30 seconds later, a crisp notification pinged on the tablet in front of Vivian. $10 million, with the searing heat of those digits, slammed into her account in full. The conference room fell into a deathly silence. The color drained from Marcus's face instantly. He slumped into his chair like a deflated balloon, staring at me as if he had seen a ghost. He couldn't fathom how this man, who had appeared out of nowhere, could casually drop 10 million in cold hard cash as if he were buying a cup of coffee. Mr. Marcus, it seems there's no place for you in this deal. As for that cigar, you can take it home and eat it slowly. Vivian stood up, a stunningly cold sneer curling at the corners of her mouth as she issued a direct order for him to leave. After Marcus and his men slunk out of the conference room in disgrace, Vivian turned around and looked me over once more. This time, her gaze was no longer one of simple scrutiny, but an extremely dangerous fervor. You smashed $3 million worth of my storefront downstairs, then came up here and casually dropped 10 million to snatch my project. Ryder Donovan, just what kind of monster are you? She walked slowly toward me, her high heels striking the carpet in a rhythm that felt intensely oppressive. I am the monster who can help you uproot the Thorn family. I met her gaze without flinching, feeling the suffocating queenly aura radiating from her. Vivian leaned forward slightly, her lips brushing against my ear as she spoke with a breath of lethal temptation. In this circle, raw cash isn't enough. You need a brain that can turn that money into a deadly weapon. The Thorn family won't let you go. They will mobilize the entire power of Wall Street to short you. Then let them come. I reached out and wrapped my arm around her slender waist, pulling her toward me. As long as you stand by my side, I guarantee that all of Wall Street will crawl at our feet. Vivian did not resist. Instead, an unprecedented ambition ignited in her eyes. In this moment, violent cash flow and the world's top financial mind officially forged the most dangerous alliance on Earth. In this city where money never sleeps, the real wars are never fought with guns and cannons, but with flickering candlesticks and cold, hard numbers. On the third night after our alliance was formed, Vivian and I stood in her midtown Manhattan penthouse duplex. The space had been transformed into a top-tier financial command center, with 6 massive curved screens on the wall flashing a piercing red light. They've made their move, Vivian said, biting her lower lip, her icy blue eyes reflecting the stock curves that were currently cascading downward like a waterfall. The Thorn Consortium's counterattack came even more fiercely than we had anticipated. Marcus and Julian had leveraged their family's vast resources, borrowing up to $50 million in stock to launch a brutal short-selling execution against the AI startup we had just funded in the dark pool markets. Because this company is about to go public on the Nasdaq via a SPAC merger tomorrow morning, the current dark pool options trading is a life-or-death battle. If the stock price falls below the set liquidation level before midnight, not only will the company go bankrupt instantly, but Vivian's entire venture capital empire will also completely collapse due to triggering a chain of debt defaults. The other side is still selling frantically. Our buy wall has already been breached. My best friend Brody sat at the keyboard, his fingers tapping at lightning speed as if cramping, his forehead drenched in cold sweat. Ryder, Vivian, if there isn't a massive influx of capital to prop up the price within 10 minutes, we're all finished. Just then, the speakerphone on the conference table rang, and Julian's nauseatingly arrogant laughter echoed through the room. Good evening, my dear Vivian, and you too, Ryder the mechanic. Julian's voice was laced with the thrill of long-awaited revenge. How does it feel to watch your assets burn like joss paper? Ryder, did you think $10 million was enough to walk tall in New York? In front of old money families? Your little bit of cash can't even make a splash. After tonight, I'll make sure you crawl back to Queens to unclog sewers. Vivian's face was pale. She turned to look at me, her voice carrying a rare tremor. Ryder, that $10 million in reserve funds you transferred to me is almost burned through. We're facing a $50 million short position now. We might actually lose. Lose? I let out a cold laugh. Pulling a cigar from my pocket, I lit it and took a deep drag. I glanced up at the atomic clock on the wall. The time read 11:58 p.m. Brody, I walked to the screen, staring at the red line of death that was about to bottom out, and commanded in a low voice, max out the trading leverage and set a market buy order for me. Every single short order they dare to list on the market. I want them all. Are you insane? Brody whipped his head around. We have less than $10 million left in our account, and they still have tens of millions in ammunition. You're walking straight into a death trap. Do as I say. I slammed my hand onto the table. The sheer pressure of my presence forced Brody to instinctively shut his mouth and obediently type in the command code. 11:59. On the other end of the line, Julian was still mocking us frantically. Why so quiet? Desperate? 1 minute left on the countdown. Get ready for your bankruptcy. 12 o'clock sharp. Ding. Midnight Zero rule system activated. The cold yet beautiful mechanical voice arrived right on schedule. I stared intently at the available funds account on Brody's computer screen, which displayed 10 million, and issued a thunderous command in my mind. Add that zero for me. Buzz, at that very instant, the numbers on the screen flickered frantically as if having a seizure. That 10 million, which had been pushed to the brink, suddenly saw an extra zero explode onto the end of it, without any external funds being transferred in. 100 million! A pure cash balance of exactly $100 million appeared prominently on the trading account. What? What the hell is going on? Is there a bug in the system? Brody nearly fell off his chair in fright, stuttering and roaring as he pointed at the long string of zeros on the screen. Vivian also suddenly covered her crimson lips. Her eyes, usually calm and composed, now filled with extreme shock and disbelief. In this strictly regulated financial system, how could $100 million in cash appear out of thin air in a single second? Stop dazing off, Brody. I exhaled a thick cloud of cigar smoke onto the screen, a grim, reaper-like smirk curling at the corners of my mouth. Hit enter. Let them see the meaning of true cruelty. With trembling fingers, Brody slammed down the enter key. The next second, a massive buy order worth a staggering $100 million slammed into the dark pool market like a nuclear bomb. This is no longer just a support bid. This is a total massacre. Every single short order placed by the Thorn family couldn't even hold out for a second against this $100 million tidal wave. They were swallowed whole in an instant. The red waterfall line on the big screen, at the very moment it hit rock bottom, defied the laws of physics by surging upward at a terrifying angle, transforming into a towering green pillar that pierced the heavens. A short squeeze. It's an epic short squeeze. Brody leaped from his chair in excitement, screaming frantically. Their short positions are being forcibly liquidated. The Thorn family has been wiped out. Over the speakerphone, Julian's arrogant laughter came to a dead stop, replaced by the sound of things being smashed and Marcus's desperate roars. The $50 million in leveraged funds they had deployed vanished into thin air in that single moment. Not only that, but because they could not deliver the borrowed shares, they were now facing astronomical damages that would be enough to cripple the entire syndicate. Julian, I said, walking over to the phone, my tone as calm as if I were discussing the day's weather. I told you, the days of the Thorn family running wild in New York are over. This is just the appetizer. With that, I pulled the phone line straight out of the wall. Turning around, I saw Vivian watching me quietly. There was no longer any trace of doubt or calculation in her eyes. In its place was a godlike reverence and an intense longing born of being conquered by absolute power. Ryder, she whispered, her voice raspy. I didn't say a word. but simply strode over and gripped her delicate chin. In the face of this brilliant victory forged by $100 million, any words were pale. Only conquest was the ultimate celebration of triumph. Late on the night of the 9th day, a torrential rain fell over Manhattan. Lightning, like silver swords, tore through the Wall Street sky shrouded in greed. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking this city ruled by money. There were only 10 seconds left until midnight. Ryder, are you sure your mysterious funds will be in place before the market opens tomorrow morning? Vivian stood behind me, holding a glass of red wine, her voice carrying a hint of tension she couldn't hide. In the brutal short squeeze just a few days ago, the Thorne family suffered a heavy blow, yet the foundations of this century-old money dynasty remained deep. To utterly crush us, Marcus leveraged the family's final connections, uniting with several major Wall Street investment banks. They are preparing to launch a devastating, all-out counterattack against Vivian's venture capital group at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. They think I've run out of ammunition and supplies. After all, who would imagine that a mechanic with no background could possess a cash flow more terrifying than those century-old conglomerates? 10, 9, 8. I didn't look back, merely counting down silently in my mind. 3, 2, 1. Ding. The Midnight Zero rule system has been activated. That familiar voice arrived right on schedule, like God sounding the trumpet of judgment. I closed my eyes, locking my mind onto the $100 million balance in my Chase bank account. Add this final zero for me. Let this game come to a complete end. In an instant, I felt a slight wave of dizziness. When my vision refocused on the phone screen, that number, already enough to drive any ordinary person mad, underwent a nuclear explosion capable of triggering a financial tsunami. 100 million has turned into 1 billion. A full $1 billion in pure cash. No leverage, no betting agreements, no complex trust funds, just a solid 10-figure cash reserve ready to be unleashed into the market at any moment. In this world, there are many billionaires on paper, but those who can produce $1 billion in liquid capital at a moment's notice are few and far between. And now, I am one of them. Prepare your acquisition contracts. Vivian. I turned around, looking at her stunning face as a cruel smile played on my lips. Tomorrow morning, we're going to Thorne Tower to claim our spoils of war. The next morning at 8:50 a.m., at the Thorne Consortium headquarters on Wall Street, in the executive boardroom on the top floor, Marcus was standing before the conference table, drenched in sweat as he reassured the restless board members and bank representatives. Please rest assured, everyone. The Thorne family's credit is rock solid, as long as your banks agree to extend that $500 million short-term debt by 3 months. Once our European projects remit the funds, thud, the 2 heavy walnut doors were kicked open by me, the loud crash cutting off Marcus's hollow promises. Dressed in a black suit custom-made overnight by top Savio tailors, I strolled in with Vivian and a dozen elite lawyers. Sorry to interrupt your funeral service. I walked straight to the head of the conference table, shoved Marcus aside, and sat down imperiously in the leather chairman's seat that originally belonged to him. Ryder, you persistent piece of filth. Julian, his eyes bloodshot, lunged to his feet and pointed at me, snarling like a rabid dog. Security, throw these 2 trespassing bastards out of here. Not a single security guard dared to move, for my bodyguards had already completely taken control of the floor. Marcus was trembling with rage. Ryder, do you think winning one dark pool trade gives you the right to run wild here? This is the Thorne family headquarters. The people sitting here are the most powerful bankers on Wall Street. Bankers? Are you talking about them? I let out a cold laugh and snapped my fingers. The lawyer behind me immediately stepped forward and slammed a thick stack of documents onto the conference table. Take a good look, Marcus. Half an hour ago, these bankers sold me every single one of the Thorne conglomerate's maturing commercial papers and short-term debts, totaling $800 million, as a single package. I leaned back in my chair, looking at him as if he were a dead man. As soon as those words were spoken, Marcus looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He whipped his head around to stare at the bank representatives. One of the representatives coughed awkwardly. Mr. Thorne, the terms Mr. Donovan offered were simply too tempting. He took over the entire portfolio in pure cash, and at a 5% premium. In this capital winter, no one turns down the allure of $1 billion in cash. $1 billion in cash. The figure hit everyone in the room like a sledgehammer to the heart. Marcus's legs gave out, and he collapsed straight into his chair. Julian's face turned ashen, rendered completely speechless. The century-old foundation they were so proud of was as flimsy as paper in the face of such overwhelming, violent cash flow. Now, I am your largest creditor. I stood up, leaning my hands on the table and looking down at the uncle and nephew from a position of power. According to the debt terms, if you cannot repay this debt by 9 o'clock this morning, which is right now, I will exercise my right as a creditor to perform a forced liquidation. All assets, buildings, and stocks of the Thorne family will belong to me. A deathly silence filled the conference room, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. 9 o'clock sharp. Time's up. I straightened my posture and adjusted the cuffs of my suit. Vivian, Notify the Federal Bankruptcy Court and the SEC. As of the 2nd, the Thorn Consortium is officially struck from the records of Wall Street. Julian suddenly broke down. He scrambled toward me on all fours, clutching my legs tightly while sobbing hysterically. Ryder, Mr. Donovan, I'm begging you. Leave me just a few shares, even 1%. I can't end up sleeping on the streets. I looked down at this once lofty, insufferable brat of Wall Street. I pulled a crumpled $1 bill from my pocket and tossed it in his face like a piece of trash. 10 days ago, this single dollar was all I had left to my name. I survived on it. I coldly pulled my leg back, looking into his desperate eyes. Now, I'm gifting it to you. Go pray for a miracle. Trash. The Miami sunshine is indeed much lovelier than the bone-chilling winds of Queens. New York. I lay shirtless and lazy on the top deck of the 0 degrees, a 300-foot super yacht. The sea breeze, carrying a hint of salt and the scent of expensive sunscreen, lightly brushed against my cheeks. Exactly 1 week has passed since that Wall Street massacre that shocked the world. The Thorn conglomerate, a century-old behemoth, collapsed instantly before my $1 billion in pure cash flow. Marcus is currently facing centuries of prison time as the FBI investigates him for accounting fraud and insider trading. As for Julian, that once arrogant Wall Street brat, I heard he's now working odd jobs at a dilapidated car wash in Brooklyn, being barked at like a dog every single day. Meanwhile, my gold-digging ex-girlfriend, Chloe, went into a frenzy after seeing the news that I had become the youngest billionaire on the Forbes list. She called me hundreds of times and even ran to the door of my old, rundown garage, weeping and begging for a reconciliation. I simply had my bodyguards toss her next to a trash can 2 blocks away. Some trash, once thrown away, should never be picked up again. What are you thinking about, my financial overlord? A lazy and incredibly seductive voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned my head, and my breath hitched slightly. Vivian was walking barefoot across the teak deck, carrying 2 glasses of chilled Dom Perignon. She wasn't wearing the stifling, custom-tailored Wall Street suit today. Instead, she had changed into a scorching burgundy bikini, draped in a translucent white silk cover-up. The sunlight spilled over her flawless, sultry figure, making her even more captivating than the Caribbean Sea itself. She walked over to me and naturally straddled my lap, handing me one of the champagne glasses. I was thinking that just over 10 days ago, I was huddled in a drafty garage, staring at the last dollar in my account. I said, taking the glass and sliding my arm around her slender, supple waist. And now, I've not only bought out half of Wall Street, but I also have the most dangerous and most enchanting female CEO in all of America. Vivian let out a soft chuckle, her ice blue eyes shimmering with an intoxicated glow. She reached out a slender finger, gently tracing the outline of my lips. All of Wall Street is frantically digging into your background right now. They can't find your trust funds. They can't find your offshore accounts. They can only watch in despair as you use that bottomless cash flow to trample the rules they spent decades writing into the dirt. Vivian leaned down, her nose almost touching mine. Ryder, you are quite simply an unexplainable miracle. The miracle is just getting started. Baby, I whispered, staring into her eyes. Deep within my mind, the midnight zero rule system that had changed my destiny lay quietly dormant. I no longer needed to consciously increase that zero every day, because the capital empire I now controlled was generating wealth every second that ordinary people couldn't earn in several lifetimes. But when necessary, it remained my ultimate trump card to crush any obstacle in my path. What do you plan to do next? Vivian bit her crimson lip. Now that we've swallowed the Thorn family's assets, we have no rivals left on the East Coast. Since the East Coast no longer offers a challenge, we'll go and conquer the West Coast. The tech giants of Silicon Valley, the Hollywood elite in Los Angeles, the energy tycoons of Texas. I tossed the crystal goblet into the nearby pool and tightened my grip, pulling her flush against my chest. I want the name Ryder Donovan carved into the very fabric of this entire country. A flash of feverish ambition and obsession erupted in Vivian's eyes. In this world that worships the strong, absolute power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Then take me with you, she whispered, and let's conquer the world together. She tossed aside the wine glass in her hand, hooked her arms around my neck, and initiated a passionate, fervent kiss on my lips. On this afternoon filled with sunshine, waves, and the scent of money, we kissed with reckless abandon aboard this super yacht worth over $100 million. The entanglement of our tongues was like our frantic plundering of the capital markets, aggressive and filled with a suffocating thrill. I am Ryder Donovan, a mechanic who crawled out of the gutter, and I've completely turned the tables thanks to a zero at midnight. Wealth, power, revenge, and the peerless beauty in my arms. I want it all. And this is merely a trivial starting point in my invincible life of dominating America. The end.